Declined, the paramedic barked while my 14-year-old son twitched on our kitchen floor. Kelly had emptied every account hours before I landed, then vanished with my smooth-talking neighbor. As sirens wailed, a deputy shoved foreclosure papers into my free hand. My world collapsed in 60 seconds. But combat taught me one truth. Panic is just unclaimed power. I still carried Dad's battered silver compass and a mission no thief could predict. The people who stole my family's future are about to learn I never leave a man behind. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Nathan Riker, and I'm 39 years old. After 15 years of deployments, I finally promised Kelly I'd retire from the Army and focus on our family. My wife, Kelly, once my high school sweetheart, had grown increasingly distant during video calls, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Our son, Mason, 14 and growing too fast, spent most calls showing me his gaming achievements while avoiding talk about school. My neighbor, Gary Lefebvre, a smooth-talking financial advisor, had been helping Kelly with paperwork during my absence. My fingers traced the worn edges of Dad's silver compass, the same one that got him through Vietnam, as something cold settled in my chest. Some battles leave no survivors. But let me start from the beginning. I pushed the door open, and it swung inward with a low creak that shouldn't have been there. Kelly always kept the hinges oiled, one of her little quirks. The darkness inside felt wrong, too thick somehow. I fumbled for the light switch, but nothing happened when I flipped it. Kelly? Mason? My voice bounced off the walls and came back hollow. I dug my flashlight from my duffel and clicked it on, the beam cutting through stale air that hit me like a physical thing. The smell was all wrong. Spoiled milk and something musty, like wet drywall after a leak. My nose wrinkled as I moved the light across the entryway. Anybody home? The silence answered back, punctuated by the soft beep of what sounded like the house alarm running on backup power. That explained the dead lights. At least, power outage, maybe. I swept the flashlight beam along the hallway wall and froze. The family photos that should have been there, Kelly's carefully arranged timeline of our life together, were gone. Just nail holes remained, little wounds in the drywall where memories had been ripped away. You ever get that feeling where your skin goes cold before your brain catches up to why? That's what happened as I moved deeper into my own house, feeling like an intruder. Mason, you here, buddy? The living room looked like a tornado had picked through it. Kelly's prized collection of Motown vinyls, the ones her dad had left her, were missing from their shelf. The entertainment center stood empty, except for Mason's gaming console. Boxes were stacked against the far wall, but they weren't unpacked. They were sealed with packing tape, labeled in Kelly's neat handwriting. I remembered the summer Mason turned 10, when we'd built that entertainment center together. The smell of fresh-cut pine, his small hands carefully holding the drill while I guided him. Steady hands make strong homes, I'd told him, echoing what my dad always said. The dining room was stripped bare. No table, no chairs, just dust outlines where they'd stood for years. My heartbeat picked up tempo as I headed toward Mason's room. The door was ajar, and I pushed it open to find his gaming chair toppled over, posters torn from walls. His bed was unmade, sheets twisted like he'd left in a hurry. Mason! My voice had taken on an edge I didn't recognize. The bathroom was next. Towels gone. Medicine cabinet emptied. Kelly's expensive face creams and makeup vanished. Our bedroom looked like it had been ransacked. Dresser drawers pulled out, closet doors hanging open. Kelly's clothes were gone. Mine were still there, untouched since I'd deployed. The beeping from the alarm system grew more insistent as I moved back toward the kitchen. My flashlight beam bounced across the linoleum floor, catching on something that shouldn't have been there. A shoe. Mason's favorite sneaker. The one with the Marvel logo. I swung the beam further, and the world stopped. Mason was sprawled across the kitchen floor, one arm outstretched toward the back door, his face turned away from me. Next to his limp hand sat an open bottle of vodka, the expensive stuff Kelly kept for company. Beside it, a pill organizer with compartments popped open. mostly empty. Mason! I dropped my duffel and flashlight, diving to the floor beside him. The beam rolled, casting grotesque shadows across my son's face. His skin was pale, almost bluish, his lips parted with a thin line of dried spittle trailing down his chin. I pressed my fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, thready and weak, but there. His chest moved with shallow, labored breaths. "Mason, can you hear me? Mason!" I patted his cheek gently, then more firmly. No response. The house alarm beeped again, a persistent reminder of systems failing. I fumbled for my phone, fingers suddenly clumsy as I punched in 911. 911, what's your emergency? My son. My voice cracked. My son's unconscious. Pills and alcohol. He's breathing, but won't wake up. I rattled off our address as I rolled Mason onto his side, checking his mouth to make sure his airway was clear. His skin felt cool and clammy under my hands. "Sir, is he breathing?" "Yes, but it's shallow. He's unresponsive. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me." I'd seen men bleeding out in the dust of Kandahar. I'd applied tourniquets while bullets cracked overhead. But nothing had prepared me for the sight of my own son dying on our kitchen floor. The dispatcher's voice seemed to come from miles away. "Sir, do you know what he took?" I glanced at the pill organizer. "I don't know. There's an empty pill case here. And vodka." "How old is your son?" 14. He's 14. The words felt like gravel in my throat. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Sirens belong to combat zones, to roadside bombs and ambushes, not to suburban kitchens where a boy should be safe. The red and blue lights began to flash through the windows, painting Mason's pale face in alternating colors as the ambulance pulled up outside. "Sir, I need you to start CPR immediately," the dispatcher's voice commanded through the phone. "Is he on his back on a hard surface?" I'd already rolled Mason onto his back, muscle memory from a dozen field exercises kicking in. "Yes. Place the heel of your hand in the center of his chest. Put your other hand on top and push down hard and fast, about 2 inches deep. Count with me." I jammed my thumb on the speaker button and tossed the phone beside Mason's head. My hands found the center of his chest, so narrow, so damn fragile compared to the grown men I'd performed this on before. 1, 2, 3, 4. The dispatcher counted steadily as I pressed down, feeling his ribcage give beneath my palms. The house was silent except for the counting, the alarm's intermittent beeping, and the wet sound of my compressions. 15 years in combat zones, and I'd never felt this kind of terror. My son's life draining away beneath my hands. 28, 29, 30. Now give 2 breaths. I tilted Mason's head back, pinched his nose, and sealed my mouth over his. His breath tasted of vodka and vomit. I blew twice, watching his chest rise slightly with each breath. Back to compressions. 1, 2. I locked my elbows and leaned my weight into it, feeling a slight crack beneath my hands that made me wince. Better a broken rib than a dead kid. They'd taught us in combat medicine. "Sir, help is 2 minutes out. Keep going." Sweat dripped from my forehead onto Mason's face as I pumped. "Come on, buddy, stay with me, stay with me." Had it been 3 minutes, 5, time stretched and compressed like a rubber band. The sirens grew louder, then cut abruptly. Car doors slammed outside. "Front doors open," I shouted, not breaking rhythm. "Kitchen!" Heavy footsteps pounded through the house. 2 paramedics burst in, equipment bags slung over their shoulders. The younger one dropped beside me, touching Mason's neck. "How long's he been down?" he asked, already unzipping a bag. "Don't know. Found him like this maybe 10 minutes ago." My voice sounded mechanical, like someone else was speaking. "I'll take over compressions." The medic nudged me aside, his hands replacing mine on Mason's chest. The second paramedic, an older woman with cropped gray hair, was already attaching leads to Mason's chest. Suspected overdose. I pointed to the pill organizer and vodka bottle. Found these next to him. She nodded grimly, checking the monitor. V-fib. We need to shock him. Stand back. I scrambled backward as she reached for the defibrillator pads, peeling back their backing to reveal adhesive surfaces that gleamed under the kitchen lights like chrome medals of honor. She placed them precisely on Mason's chest, one above his right nipple, one on his left side. "Clear!" she called. Mason's body jerked as the current passed through him. The monitor beeped, showing a jagged line that meant nothing to me. Still in V-fib. Charging again. Clear. Another jolt. Mason's body arched slightly, then settled. Through the window, I could see red and blue lights painting the street in alternating colors. Blinds fluttered in neighboring houses, faces peering out. But no one stepping outside to help or even ask what was happening. The monitor suddenly changed tone. The older paramedic's face relaxed slightly. "We've got a rhythm. Weak, but it's there." The younger one was already preparing an IV line. "We need to move him now. Can you tell us what medications he might have taken?" I shook my head. "I just got home from deployment. I don't know what's in the house." They worked quickly, sliding a backboard under Mason, securing an oxygen mask over his face. His skin was still that terrible grayish blue, his eyes closed as if he were merely sleeping. "We're taking him to Cape Fear Valley," the woman said, as they lifted him onto the gurney. "You can follow us there." I nodded, stumbling to my feet. My knees felt like water after the adrenaline rush. I grabbed my wallet from my duffel bag and followed them outside. The night air hit me like a slap. Neighbors stood in doorways now, whispering to each other as the paramedics wheeled Mason toward the waiting ambulance. "I'll be right behind you," I said, reaching for my car keys. The older paramedic turned to me. "Sir, we need to confirm some payment details before we transport. Do you have insurance information?" My mind blanked momentarily. "What? Yes, military insurance, TRICARE." She handed me a tablet. "We need a card on file for any uncovered expenses." I fumbled with my wallet, pulling out my debit card, the joint account Kelly and I maintained. I swiped it through the reader attached to the tablet. The screen flashed red. Declined. "That can't be right," I muttered. Trying again. Declined. The paramedic's expression softened with practiced sympathy. "Sir, we're still transporting him, but you'll need to provide valid payment details within 24 hours. I nodded numbly, watching as they loaded Mason into the ambulance. Something was very wrong. That account had over $40,000 in it last time I checked. As the ambulance pulled away, a police cruiser rolled up, its lights still flashing. A deputy stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Nathan Riker," he called. "That's me," I replied, my lungs feeling tight, like the Afghan dust had suddenly found its way back into my chest. He approached, expression unreadable as he extended a folded paper. "Sorry to do this now, sir, but I'm required to serve you with these documents immediately." I took the paper from Deputy Matson's hand, the Sheriff's Department logo swimming before my eyes. My fingers felt numb as I unfolded it. "What is this?" I asked, though the bold red lettering at the top already gave me the answer. "Foreclosure notice, sir," Matson said, his voice neutral but not unkind. "Property's been flagged for immediate effect. Mortgage hasn't been paid in 3 months." The words on the page blurred together. Terms like default and possession jumped out at me. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might double over. "There must be some mistake," I said. "I've been deployed. The payments are automatic from our joint account." Matson shifted his weight. "I'm just the messenger, sir. But you might want to know there's a repo company waiting." He nodded toward the street where a tow truck idled at the curb, its headlights illuminating our family SUV in the driveway. "They're taking our car, now." My voice cracked. I'd spent 15 years in combat zones, seen things that would break most men, but this was breaking me. "Not if you can show proof of payment," Matson said. "Otherwise, they have authorization to take the vehicle tonight." I reached for my phone, scrolling to find the banking app. When it loaded, the balance that should have shown tens of thousands instead displayed $12.47. Every muscle in my body went rigid. "I need to get to the hospital," I said, the words coming out like gravel. My son, I heard, Matson interrupted, glancing at the departing ambulance. Look, they can't tow your car if you're in it. Get to the hospital. Sort out your son first. He lowered his voice. I was Army too. 10th Mountain. You've got 48 hours before they can physically remove you from the premises. I nodded, grateful for the small mercy. Thanks. Don't thank me, he said, already walking back to his cruiser. Just doing my job. I sprinted to the SUV, praying the key would still work. It did. As I started the engine, the repo driver got out of his truck, but I was already backing out of the driveway. In my rearview mirror, I saw him talking into a radio, probably reporting that the target vehicle was mobile. The ambulance was long gone. I called dispatch, explained the situation, and they patched me through to the rig carrying Mason. Sir, your son's condition is critical, the paramedic told me. We're pushing fluids and monitoring his vitals, but you should get here as soon as possible. I'm on my way, I said. But I don't know where my wife is. We'll need a parent or guardian to authorize treatment. I'm his father. I'll authorize whatever he needs. Understood, sir. We'll see you at Cape Fear. I hung up and immediately dialed Kelly's number. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. Her recorded voice sounded cheerful, normal. A stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around me. Kelly, it's me. Mason's been taken to Cape Fear Medical Center. He overdosed. Kelly, he's... My voice broke. Call me back immediately. I tried again, straight to voicemail. And again, same result. Each unanswered ring hammered the truth deeper into my skull. She had emptied our account, abandoned our bills, and vanished. I hit the steering wheel so hard my palms stung. Damn it! Kelly, where are you? Traffic lights blurred as I sped toward the hospital, my mind racing through possibilities. Had she been kidnapped? No. The systematic emptying of accounts, the unpaid bills stretching back months. This was planned. The hospital's emergency entrance loomed ahead. I parked haphazardly, not caring if they towed the SUV. Mason was all that mattered now. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everyone in a sickly pallor. The admissions desk was staffed by a woman who looked like she'd seen every kind of tragedy. My son was just brought in by ambulance, I said, breathless. Mason Riker. She typed something into her computer. Yes, he's being assessed now. I need to see your insurance card, please. I have TRICARE, I said. Through the military. I'll need the card, sir. I don't have it. My wife handles all that. Her expression didn't change. Is your wife coming? I don't know where she is. The woman's fingers paused over her keyboard. I see. Well, we'll need insurance verification before we can proceed with anything beyond emergency stabilization. My son overdosed, I said, my voice rising. He needs whatever treatment is necessary. Of course, sir. Emergency care is being provided. But for admission and continued treatment, we need insurance confirmation or payment arrangement. A doctor appeared through swinging doors. Family of Mason Riker. That's me, I said, turning away from the desk. I'm his father. The doctor's face was grave. We've stabilized him for now, but his condition is serious. We're moving him to the ICU. What did he take? Based on preliminary tests, it looks like a combination of benzodiazepines and alcohol. Do you know if he has a prescription? I shook my head. I just got back from Afghanistan. I don't know what's been happening here. The doctor nodded. We'll continue running tests. Is the mother available? We'll need authorization for some procedures. I can authorize whatever he needs, I said firmly. Of course, but we'll need some paperwork sorted out. Will the mother be joining us? Before I could answer, orderlies wheeled Mason through on a stretcher. His face was ashen, an oxygen mask obscuring his features. They pushed him toward the elevator. I need to go with him, I said, moving to follow. Sir, the admissions woman called after me. We still need to sort out your payment information. The elevator doors were closing. I caught a final glimpse of Mason's face, so young and vulnerable, before he disappeared from view. I stood there, clutching the foreclosure papers in one hand, my useless phone in the other. No wife, no money, maybe no home. But I still had Mason, if I could keep him alive. Dawn stained the ICU windows pink while I sat hunched in a molded plastic chair, watching Mason's chest rise and fall. The night had stretched into eternity, punctuated by nurses checking vitals and adjusting medications. Each time his breathing hitched, I jerked forward, ready to call for help. Mason shivered under heated blankets despite the warmth. His sandy hair, so like mine, stuck to his forehead in damp strands. The machines surrounding him beeped an expensive rhythm, tracking heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, numbers that meant life or death. Remember when he was 7, and I taught him to fish at Lake Jordan? The way his small hands trembled with excitement as he reeled in that first bream, sunlight dancing across the water. Now his hands trembled for entirely different reasons. "Mr. Riker?" I looked up to find a woman in her 40s standing at the foot of Mason's bed. She wore a navy blazer and carried a clipboard. "I'm Sandra Wexler from Patient Services," she said, extending her hand. "Do you have a moment to speak outside?" My eyes darted back to Mason. "It'll just take a few minutes," she assured me. "The nurses will watch him." Reluctantly, I followed her to a small consultation room across the hall. The space felt airless, with motivational posters that seemed to mock the gravity of the situation. "Mr. Riker, I understand you've been with your son all night," she began, her tone professional but gentle. "I wanted to update you on his case management." "How much longer will he need to stay?" I asked. "That depends on his recovery. The doctors are concerned about potential organ damage from the overdose. They're recommending at least 3 more days of observation, possibly longer." I nodded. "Whatever he needs. That's what I wanted to discuss." She glanced down at her clipboard. "The estimated cost for Mason's treatment is already approaching 5 figures, Mr. Riker. That's payable upon discharge." My stomach dropped. "I have TRICARE through the military. We've been trying to verify that coverage, but there seems to be an issue. The account is showing as inactive or unavailable to you." "That's impossible," I said, though a sickening realization was dawning. "Check again." "We have. Multiple times. Additionally," she hesitated, "there's another matter that's been brought to our attention." Before she could continue, there was a knock at the door. A security guard in a blue uniform stepped in, followed by a hospital administrator in a crisp white coat. "Mr. Riker," the administrator said, "I'm Dr. Patel, hospital security liaison. We need to inform you of a situation that affects your presence here." The guard stood with his hands clasped in front, watching me carefully. "What situation?" I asked, tension coiling in my chest. Dr. Patel produced an official-looking document. "Pray, we've received notification of a temporary protective order that bars you from accessing any property or finances belonging to Kelly Hartman Riker." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "A what?" "A protective order," he repeated, handing me the paper. "It was issued yesterday. It specifies that you are to have no contact with Mrs. Riker and are prohibited from accessing joint accounts or entering the family residence." The document swam before my eyes. Kelly's name was there, along with a judge's signature. Words jumped out. "Reasonable fear. History of volatility. Protection necessary." "This is bullshit," I said, my voice low. "Complete bullshit." The security guard shifted his stance slightly. "According to this filing," Dr. Patel continued, "your wife alleges that you returned from deployment, mentally unstable and prone to violence. She claims she fears for her safety." Bewilderment gave way to rage, then a cold, clarifying focus, the kind that settles in during an ambush. "I have never," I said, each word distinct and measured, "raised a hand to my wife or my son. Not once, not ever. I've never threatened them. I've never even raised my voice to them." Dr. Patel nodded noncommittally. "The order is temporary. There will be a hearing in 48 hours to determine whether it should be made permanent." 48 hours. The clock was already ticking. I noticed the security guard's eyes drift to my duffel bag in the corner of Mason's room, visible through the doorway. The PTSD awareness patch on the side, given to me by a counselor on base, suddenly felt like an admission of guilt. "What does this mean for Mason?" I asked, my voice dropping to a gravel whisper. Sandra cleared her throat. As Mason's father, you still have the right to be here and make medical decisions, but regarding payment, she trailed off. I can't access our accounts, I finished for her. Correct? And if Mrs. Riker is unreachable, the implication hung in the air. No insurance verification, no access to funds, no way to pay for Mason's care. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight, Mr. Riker? Sandra asked softly. The question slammed into me like a bunker door. I'd been so focused on Mason that I hadn't even considered where I would sleep. The foreclosure notice meant the house wasn't an option, even without the protective order. I'll figure something out, I said, my mind racing through a short list of possibilities. None seemed viable. Sandra exchanged a glance with Dr. Patel. The hospital has some resources for families in crisis. I can connect you with... I'm not a charity case, I cut her off, harsher than intended. I'm a staff sergeant with 15 years of service. I just need to make some calls. But as I said it, I realized I didn't know who to call. My parents were long gone. Army buddies were scattered across the globe. And the person who should have been standing beside me, my wife of 15 years, had orchestrated this entire nightmare. I spent that night curled on a hard chapel pew, drifting in and out of consciousness under the cold glow of emergency lights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mason's blue lips, heard the beeping monitors. The vinyl bench stuck to my cheek, and my back screamed from the awkward angle, but it beat sleeping in my truck. Around 3 a.m, a night nurse took pity and brought me a scratchy blanket and a cup of vending machine coffee that tasted like warm motor oil. I thanked her with the automatic politeness drilled into me since basic. Your boy's fever's holding steady, she said. Not better, but not worse either. I nodded, too exhausted for words. When she left, I bowed my head and did something I hadn't done since Dad's funeral. I prayed. Not the formal kind with fancy words, just desperate bargaining with whatever might be listening. Take it out on me if you need to, but let Mason pull through. Dawn arrived with the clatter of breakfast carts and shift changes. I splashed cold water on my face in the chapel bathroom, finger-combed my hair, and pulled on yesterday's wrinkled fatigues. The uniform felt like armor, something familiar in a world suddenly turned inside out. Mason was still unconscious when I checked on him, but his color looked marginally better. The day nurse assured me this was normal after what his body had been through. He's fighting, she said. He's a fighter, I agreed, throat tight. Like his old man. I needed air and a plan. The hospital walls were closing in, and the sidelong glances from security weren't helping. Outside, morning humidity wrapped around me like a damp blanket as I pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably bill collectors. Nothing from Kelly. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the one person who'd never questioned my character. Even during the worst firefights, First Sergeant Samuel Top Morales. He'd retired 2 years back but stayed near Fort Liberty, doing handyman work and mentoring young soldiers. He answered on the second ring. Riker, thought you were still sandboxing it. Got back yesterday. Listen, Top. My voice cracked, embarrassing me. I need help. There was a beat of silence. Where are you? I told him. Stay put. 20 minutes. Exactly 19 minutes later, a battered blue F-150 pulled into the hospital lot. Top Morales stepped out, still barrel-chested and ramrod straight at 55. His crew cut had gone salt and pepper, but those dark eyes missed nothing. He took one look at me and nodded toward his truck. You look like warmed-over shit, son. Let's get some food in you. We ended up at Maggie's Diner, a greasy spoon near base where the waitresses knew not to ask questions when soldiers came in looking haunted. In a back booth, over plates of eggs and hash browns I couldn't taste, I laid it all out. Mason, the empty house, the drained accounts, the protective order. Top's jaw tightened with each detail, the muscle in his cheek jumping like it used to before he dressed down a platoon. He didn't interrupt, just let me get it all out. When I finished, he pushed his empty plate aside. Kelly's playing dirty. Question is why now? Why this way? I don't know. I stared into my untouched coffee. Everything seemed fine until about 3 months ago. Then the video calls got weird. Short. She'd cut them off if I asked about finances or tried to talk to Mason. 3 months. Top pulled out his phone, making a note. That's when this plan started rolling. Guaranteed. What plan? The one that empties your accounts the exact day you come home early. That's not coincidence, Riker. He flagged the waitress for more coffee. Got a veteran's legal aid contact who owes me. Guy named Harrington. Specializes in custody and divorce ambushes like this. I can't pay him, Top. I've got about $80 to my name right now. He'll work pro bono for a combat vet, and you're staying at my place until this gets sorted. I started to protest, but he cut me off with a raised hand. Non-negotiable, Staff Sergeant. My spare room's empty since my nephew shipped out to Korea. Relief flooded through me, though I tried not to show it. Having a roof, even temporarily, meant one less thing to worry about. Top pulled out his tablet. Let's see what we're dealing with. Log into your banking app. I did, showing him the zeroed-out accounts. He scrolled through the transaction history, brow furrowed. Look at this, he said, turning the screen toward me. These withdrawals started small, testing the waters. Then boom, everything goes 2 days ago. He switched to another app, typing rapidly. Give me your wife's full name and date of birth. What are you doing? Something probably illegal. Give me the info. I did. Top had connections everywhere. 30 years in the Army built a network that didn't disappear with retirement papers. 10 minutes later, he showed me his screen again. Kelly opened a new account last month. Look at these deposits. Multiple wire transfers had hit an account in Kelly's name. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. The total far exceeded what she'd drained from our savings. That's not our money, I said, a flicker of hope igniting. Or where's it coming from? That's the million-dollar question. Top's eyes narrowed. If this cash is dirty, we've got leverage. Custody hearings don't look kindly on unexplained windfalls during separation. You think she's been planning this that long? Nobody improvises this level of financial surgery. Top drained his coffee. Give me 24 hours to sniff out the source. I've still got buddies in the finance office who can trace these wires. For the first time since finding Mason, I felt something other than helpless rage. Top had always been the guy who found solutions when everyone else saw dead ends. As we stood to leave, the diner door chimed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number, but local. I answered. Mr. Riker, this is Clerk Wilson from Cumberland County Family Court. I'm calling to confirm your appearance for the protective order hearing on the 23rd at 9 a.m. Do you have counsel representing you? 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to prepare for a court battle that could determine everything. Custody, finances, my reputation. I'll be there, I said, meeting Top's steady gaze across the table. By dusk, I was pacing the length of Top's modest ranch house, wearing a path in the carpet while he hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table. The smell of burnt coffee hung in the air. We'd gone through 2 pots already. Got something, Top called out, his fingers tapping rapidly. Come look at this. I leaned over his shoulder, squinting at the screen. Military intelligence had taught Top skills that didn't exactly vanish when he retired. His contacts had come through. See these transfers? He pointed to a spreadsheet tracking Kelly's new account. They're coming from an LLC registered to Gary Lefebvre Construction and Development. My stomach dropped like I'd just stepped off a jump tower. Gary? Our neighbor Gary? One and the same. Top's weathered face was grim in the blue light of the screen. Gary Lefebvre. The guy who lived 3 doors down in the tan colonial with the perfect lawn. The guy who'd helped me install our backyard fence last summer. The guy who'd stood at my grill flipping burgers at Mason's 13th birthday, beer in hand, telling me how lucky I was to have such a great family. I remembered the way Mason had looked up to him. This successful civilian businessman who built things instead of breaking them, who was home every night instead of deployed. Why would Gary be sending Kelly money? I asked, though the possibilities were already churning in my gut. Top leaned back, chair creaking. 2 likely scenarios. Either they're having an affair and he's setting her up somewhere nice, or what? Or they're in business together, and you're the inventory they're selling off. I braced myself against the counter, suddenly needing the support. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was calculated, coordinated. While I'd been dodging IEDs in Kandahar, my wife and neighbor had been plotting. What kind of business could they possibly... My phone rang, cutting me off. Harrington, the legal aid attorney Top had connected me with. I put him on speaker. "Nathan, I've reviewed your case files," Harrington said without preamble. "I have some concerning news." Top and I exchanged glances. "The judge has made a preliminary ruling on your prenuptial agreement," Harrington continued. "It's been voided." Voided? How the hell can they void a legal document we both signed? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. The notary who witnessed the signatures, her commission had expired 3 weeks before you signed. It's a technicality, but a fatal one for the prenup. The room seemed to tilt. That prenup had been Kelly's idea originally, protection for her small inheritance. But it also specified that my military pension remained solely mine in the event of divorce, and that the primary residence would go to whoever had physical custody of Mason. "What does this mean exactly?" I asked, though I already knew. "It means Kelly may be entitled to half your pension, and the house becomes part of the divisible marital estate regardless of custody arrangements." Top muttered something that would have earned a private extra duty back in the day. "There's more," Harrington said. "The court has scheduled your custody hearing 30 days from today, 9 a.m. 30 days? That's barely enough time to... It's an expedited hearing due to the protective order allegations. The judge wants to establish a permanent custody arrangement quickly, given the circumstances." The circumstances being my wife's claims that I was mentally unstable. The room felt suddenly airless. "What are our chances?" I managed. Harrington paused. "If you miss any required child support payments in the interim, or if there's any evidence supporting Kelly's claims about your mental state, custody will likely go to her. The court tends to maintain status quo, and right now, Mason has been in her care." Except he hadn't. He'd been alone, overdosing on our kitchen floor while Kelly was God knows where with Gary. "Nathan, are you there?" "Yeah." My throat felt like sandpaper. "What's our next move?" "We file counter motions immediately. I need you to document everything. The empty house, Mason's condition, the drained accounts, and we need to establish your stability and financial capability to care for Mason." After we hung up, Top and I sat in silence for a long moment. 30 days, I finally said. "Every dollar and every day counts now." Top thumped his fist on the table. "Clock starts now. Brother, we're not letting them win this." My phone pinged with a news alert. I'd set up notifications for anything related to our neighborhood after finding the foreclosure notice. The headline made my blood freeze. "Lefebvre Construction announces quick flip property in coveted school district." I clicked through to see a familiar facade. My house. Our house. Listed for sale, with closing scheduled in exactly 3 weeks. "Son of a bitch," Top whispered, reading over my shoulder. "They're selling your house before the custody hearing." If the house sold before court, there'd be nothing left to fight for. No home to bring Mason back to, no equity to fund his recovery, no foundation to rebuild our lives. Rain hammered the windshield like machine gun fire, each drop a bullet against the glass. Top and I sat in his battered Chevy, parked across from the strip mall where Gary Lefebvre kept his construction office. It was almost 10 at night, but lights still blazed inside the storefront. "Third night in a row they've worked late," Top muttered, wiping condensation from the passenger window. "Normal contractors don't burn midnight oil unless they're hiding something." I nodded, squinting through the downpour. 2 silhouettes moved behind the blinds. Gary's lanky frame and what looked like his assistant. They hovered over a desk where a printer spat out page after page. "Rushing paperwork for the sale," I said. My jaw ached from clenching it. 30 days to custody hearing, 3 weeks to closing. The timing's not coincidence. "No such thing as coincidence in war," Top agreed, the old soldier's wisdom slipping out. He'd taught me that in Afghanistan. Enemy patterns always had purpose, even when they seemed random. My phone vibrated against my thigh. Cape Fear Medical Center flashed on the screen, sending ice through my veins. I answered immediately. "Mr. Riker? This is Dr. Patel from Pediatric Intensive Care." "What happened?" "Is Mason. He's stable, but he experienced a seizure about 40 minutes ago." Her voice was clinical but gentle. It's not uncommon during detox, especially with the combination of substances in his system. My free hand gripped the door handle until my knuckles whitened. "What do you need from me?" We'd like your consent to administer an experimental detox protocol. It's showing promising results in adolescents, potentially reducing withdrawal duration by half. Side effects? Potentially elevated liver enzymes, temporary disorientation, but the risks of continued seizures are greater at this point. I closed my eyes. Do it. Whatever helps him. After she hung up, silence filled the car except for rain drumming the roof. I stared at the phone screen. Mason's school picture still my wallpaper. His awkward smile with those braces. The cowlick I could never get to stay down no matter how much gel I applied before school pictures. He had a seizure, I finally said. Top's weathered face softened. Kid's tough, like his old man. Is he? Or did I just leave him alone too damn much? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Every deployment, every training exercise, every goddamn football game I missed. I kept telling myself it was for him, securing his future, serving my country. But maybe I just ran away from being a real father. I remembered the afternoon I taught Mason to throw a spiral in our backyard. He was 9, all elbows and determination. When he finally got it right, his face lit up like I'd handed him the moon. 2 weeks later, I deployed again. Kelly sent videos of his games. But it wasn't the same as being there. Lightning flashed, illuminating the car interior. In the rearview mirror, I caught my reflection. Gaunt, shadows under my eyes, 3 days of stubble. I hardly recognized myself. You know what Kelly told the judge? I continued, voice hollow. That I chose the army over them. That I came back changed each time. Maybe she wasn't entirely wrong. Top's hand landed heavy on my shoulder. Listen up, soldier. Self-pity is luxury you can't afford right now. That boy needs you fighting, not folding. What if fighting just makes things worse? What if surrender guarantees defeat? He cut in. You give up now, and they win everything. The house, Mason's future, your honor. Is that what you want? I inhaled deeply, tasting the metallic scent of rain through the cracked window. The storm outside matched the one raging inside me. Guilt, rage, fear, all swirling together. No, I finally said, but I need to be smart about this. We need proof, not just suspicions. Thunder rumbled, vibrating through the car. I thought of Mason lying in that hospital bed, tubes snaking from his arms, fighting a battle no 14-year-old should face. My son needed more than my guilt. He needed action. The office door suddenly swung open. Gary emerged, hunched against the rain, manila envelope clutched to his chest. He jogged to the curb where a car idled, not his usual BMW, but a nondescript sedan. Who's that? I tensed, leaning forward. Top already had his phone out, snapping photos through the rain-streaked window. Courier service. See the logo on the car door. We watched as Gary passed the envelope through the window. The courier nodded, tucked it beside him, and pulled away into the downpour. Documents, Top said. Probably for the title company or the bank. I felt a cold clarity replacing the storm of emotions. This wasn't just about Kelly's betrayal anymore. This was about stopping a calculated scheme before it stripped away everything. My home, my son, my honor. We need that paperwork, I said quietly. Or something like it. Proof of what they're doing. The rain intensified, sheets of water cascading down the windshield until Gary's office became just a glowing smudge in the darkness. Proof or nothing changes, I whispered. More to myself than to Top. And I can't let that happen. Not for Mason. Sunrise painted the eastern sky amber and gold, burning away the last of the night's rain. My eyes felt like sandpaper after hours of surveillance. But adrenaline kept me alert as we followed the courier's sedan downtown. Top drove while I tracked our target, who finally pulled into a strip mall parking lot and disappeared through glass doors marked Piedmont Escrow and Title. Bingo, Top muttered, easing into a spot with clear sight lines. I checked my watch. 7:48 a.m. Place doesn't open till 8. Perfect timing. Top reached into the back seat, grabbing a folder stuffed with printouts. Put this on. He handed me a baseball cap with a Marine Corps logo. I raised an eyebrow. Different branch throws them off, he explained. And take these. He passed me a pair of non-prescription glasses. Old intelligence trick. Changes your face shape just enough. The courier emerged empty-handed 15 minutes later. Inside, lights flickered on as employees began their day. How we playing this? I asked. Top straightened his collar. We're veterans looking into home improvement loans. Asking about refinancing options. Keep it casual. Eyes open. We waited until a few other customers had entered, then made our move. A bell chimed as we stepped inside. The office smelled of fresh coffee and printer toner, with fake potted plants flanking a reception counter. A young woman with a tight ponytail greeted us with a practiced smile. Good morning, gentlemen. How can I help you today? Top launched into our cover story. 2 army buddies looking to renovate a garage into a workshop. He casually mentioned hearing about cash-out refinance options. I scanned the room while he talked, noting the layout. Cubicles along the left wall, conference room in back, processing desk to the right where a middle-aged woman sorted documents. I recognized the manila envelope from last night sitting in her urgent tray. And my friend here just got back from overseas, Top was saying. Looking to settle down, maybe invest in property. The receptionist brightened. Actually, we have a listing coming up in Pine Meadows that would be perfect for veterans. Beautiful property, closing next week. My throat tightened. Pine Meadows, my neighborhood. Sounds interesting, I managed. Mind if I use your restroom? She pointed toward the back, past the conference room, on the left. I nodded thanks and walked deliberately, not too fast. As I passed the processing desk, I slowed, pretending to check my phone. The woman sorting papers had stepped away, leaving the envelope unattended. I glanced around, all eyes elsewhere, then casually angled my phone's camera toward the open folder. My blood froze. There, on top, was a refinance application for my address. The signature line bore my name in handwriting that almost, but not quite, matched my own. Date of signature, 6 weeks ago, when I'd been dodging mortar fire in Kandahar. I snapped several quick photos, heart hammering against my ribs. The document showed a new $380,000 mortgage against my $425,000 home. My name forged, my equity stolen. The bathroom provided temporary sanctuary. I leaned against the sink, studying the photos. The loan was set to close in 9 days, the day before my custody hearing. Gary had mortgaged my house, pocketed the cash, and now planned to sell before anyone could stop him. Everything I'd worked for, the roof over Mason's head, his college fund built into that equity, our future, rested on property I technically no longer owned. I'd been wiped out with a pen stroke while fighting overseas. When I emerged, Top caught my eye. He'd maneuvered himself to a desk where a loan officer was showing him computer screens. I circled around, pretending to examine framed certificates on the wall until I could position myself behind them. So, typically, with e-signatures, we verify through. The loan officer was explaining. On her monitor, I glimpsed a familiar document, the electronic version of what I'd just photographed. My forged signature glowed on the screen. I stepped back, composure shattering. My fists clenched until the scars across my knuckles turned white. Top noticed and gave me a subtle headshake. Stay cool. Fascinating system, Top said smoothly. My buddy here was deployed when I did my refinance. Had to sign everything from overseas. How does that verification work exactly? Oh, we have geolocation tracking on all electronic signatures, she replied. IP addresses, timestamps, all recorded in the metadata. Top nodded thoughtfully. So you could prove where someone physically was when they signed? Absolutely. It's required for legal compliance. I caught Top's meaningful glance. The fraud hinged on one keystroke. Proving I was overseas during the supposed signing would collapse their entire scheme. Top excused himself and joined me near the water cooler. We need satellite logs from CENTCOM, he whispered. Proof you were in theater when that signature happened. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. Emailing Colonel Winters now. He owes me from Mosul. The office manager, a stern woman with reading glasses on a chain, emerged from the back office. She studied us with narrowed eyes. Can I help you gentlemen find something specific? Her tone suggested she'd rather help us find the exit. "Just getting some water," I said, raising my paper cup. Top pocketed his phone. "Thank you for your time. We'll be in touch about those renovation options." We turned to leave, but the manager wasn't finished. She whispered something to the receptionist, who immediately reached for the phone. "Security to the front, please," I heard her say. We didn't run. That would look suspicious, but we didn't dawdle either. Outside, the morning sun felt suddenly too bright, too exposing. "They made us," I muttered as we crossed the parking lot. "Doesn't matter," Top replied. "We got what we needed." In the car, I pulled up the photos again. 9 days. That's all we have to stop this. 9 days is an eternity in combat time, Top said, starting the engine. "And make no mistake, soldier, we are in combat now." Top's sedan peeled away from the curb, tires chirping as we put distance between us and the escrow office. I kept checking the side mirrors, half expecting security to chase us down. "Think they'll call the cops?" I asked. "For what? 2 veterans inquiring about renovation loans?" Top shook his head. "But they'll definitely warn Gary." He took a hard right, then another, ensuring we weren't followed. Once we hit the main road, he eased off the gas and shot me a sideways glance. "All right, we need a battle plan. Operation Compass is a go." I raised an eyebrow. "Operation Compass? Your old man's compass, the one you keep talking about passing to Mason." Top tapped the steering wheel. "Fitting name for finding our way through this mess." The strategy came together as we cruised toward the hospital. Top was always a natural tactician. It's why he made first sergeant while guys with more time in service stayed platoon leaders. "We crash the closing," he said, voice steady, as if outlining a patrol route. "Show up with irrefutable proof of forgery. Freeze the sale before funds transfer. And if they refuse, then we bring cops. Mortgage fraud's a felony." Top's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "But we need airtight evidence. That's where CENTCOM logs come in." I nodded, feeling the first flicker of hope since finding Mason on that kitchen floor. "Split responsibilities." "Exactly. I'll handle the satellite logs. Prove you were physically in Afghanistan. You gather witness statements. Battle buddies who can testify you were overseas when that signature supposedly happened." My mind raced through the squad roster. Perez, Rodriguez, Wilkins. They were all on that convoy with me. Perfect. Get signed statements, maybe video calls recorded. The more voices confirming your location, the better. 8 days. The countdown pressed against my chest like a weight. Each hour that passed meant more hospital bills accumulating, more time for Kelly and Gary to cover their tracks. "What about Mason's medical costs?" I asked. "The billing office is breathing down my neck." Top's expression softened. "I can float you until payday. Veterans Emergency Fund might help too." We pulled into the hospital parking garage, the concrete walls closing in around us. I checked my watch. Nearly noon. Mason had been in ICU for 36 hours. "This isn't just about the house anymore," I said quietly. "If I lose this fight, I lose my son." Top killed the engine and turned to face me. "Not happening on my watch." The ICU's antiseptic smell hit me as we stepped off the elevator. The nurse at the station, Becky, according to her badge, looked up and actually smiled. "Mr. Riker, your son's awake. His fever broke about an hour ago." My knees nearly buckled with relief. I rushed to Mason's room, Top following a respectful distance behind. Mason lay propped against pillows, skin still pale but eyes alert. The ventilator was gone, replaced by a nasal cannula. His sandy hair stuck up in all directions, so like mine at his age it made my chest ache. "Dad," he croaked, voice raw from the tube they'd removed. I crossed to his bedside in 3 strides, carefully embracing him. "Hey, soldier, you gave me one hell of a scare." His thin arms wrapped around my neck, and I felt him trembling. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "There was a lady here," he whispered, "asking questions about you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of questions? If you ever hit me, if you yell a lot." Mason's voice cracked. "She said Mom told them you came back different, dangerous." The room seemed to tilt. Kelly had called Child Protective Services on me, another front in her war to take everything. "Mason, look at me." I held his gaze. That's not true. You know that's not true. He nodded, but fear lingered in his eyes. She recorded everything I said. I reached into my pocket, fingers closing around the silver compass. My father had pressed it into my palm before shipping out to Vietnam. Never lose your way, he'd said. Now, I placed it in Mason's hand. This was Grandpa's, I told him. He gave it to me when I needed direction. Now it's yours. Mason's fingers curled around the tarnished metal. But don't you need it? I know exactly where I'm headed. I squeezed his shoulder. And I'm not losing you. That's a promise. A soft knock interrupted us. A woman in a charcoal pantsuit stood in the doorway, CPS badge clipped to her lapel. Mr. Riker, I'm Diane Winters, Child Protective Services. Could I speak with you outside? Top stepped forward. I'm Samuel Morales, family friend and character witness for Staff Sergeant Riker. I kissed Mason's forehead. Be right back. In the hallway, Ms. Winters consulted her tablet. Mr. Riker, we need to schedule a home inspection. Standard procedure when allegations of domestic instability are made. Of course, I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage building inside. When? She tapped the screen. Next Thursday, 2 p.m. My blood froze. Thursday, the exact day of the closing. Is there any possibility of rescheduling? I asked. I have an important appointment that afternoon. I'm afraid not. The judge specifically requested this date. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes held a hint of suspicion. Is there a problem with the residents we should know about? Top stepped in smoothly. Staff Sergeant Riker is in the process of addressing maintenance issues following his deployment. Thursday will be fine. After she left, I leaned against the wall, the coincidence too perfect to be random. Thursday at 2, I muttered. Exactly when Gary's closing is scheduled. Top's eyes narrowed. They're coordinating. If you miss that inspection, I lose Mason. The reality crashed down. And if I miss the closing, you lose the house, Top finished. They've boxed you in, brother. I straightened, jaw set. Then we need to be in 2 places at once. The next morning hit like a grenade concussion. I rolled off Top's fold-out couch at 500, muscles aching from another night of fitful sleep. Dreams of Mason's blue lips and Kelly's vanishing shadow kept jerking me awake every hour. Top already had coffee brewing, the rich smell cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. He handed me a steaming mug without a word. Some bonds don't need conversation, especially not at 5 in the morning. Depositions at 8, I said, voice still rough with sleep. My lawyer says Kelly's team requested video recording. Of course they did. Top's face hardened. Easier to clip and edit when they need to make you look unhinged. I sipped the black coffee, letting the scalding liquid burn away the cobwebs. Mason's doctor says he might get discharged tomorrow. CPS won't let him come home with me yet. One battle at a time, brother. Top tapped his watch. Shower up. I'll drive you. An hour later, we pulled into the parking lot of Callahan and Associates, where my court-appointed attorney waited outside. Patricia Callahan looked exactly like what she was, an overworked legal aid lawyer with more cases than hours in the day. Her gray pantsuit had seen better days, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. Nathan, she extended her hand. Ready? As I'll ever be. Remember what we discussed. Short answers, no emotional reactions, and don't take the bait, I finished. I've been interrogated by experts. Patricia. She nodded grimly. These people are worse than any insurgent. They get paid by the hour. The conference room felt like an ambush site. Kelly's attorney, a shark in an expensive suit named Lawrence Denton, sat flanked by a court reporter and videographer. A mediator occupied the head of the table, his expression carefully neutral. No sign of Kelly herself. Staff Sergeant Riker, Denton began after preliminaries. Would you describe yourself as having difficulty controlling your temper? Patricia tensed beside me. Here we go. No, sir, I would not. Even after 4 combat tours, no signs of PTSD or anger management issues. I've completed all required psychological evaluations upon return. My record is clean. Denton smiled thinly. Let's discuss some evidence that suggests otherwise. He nodded to his assistant, who tapped a laptop. The room filled with my voice, angry, slurring, threatening. "Swear to God, Kelly, when I get back there, you'll regret ever crossing me." My stomach dropped. The voice was mine, but the words weren't. I'd never said those things. "Touch my money again and you'll see what happens when you push a man too far." Patricia's hand gripped my arm as another clip played. "You think I don't know what you're doing? I've killed men for less than what you're pulling." The mediator's eyebrows rose. I forced my breathing to remain steady, though my pulse hammered in my ears. "Mr. Riker, do you recognize your voice in these recordings?" Denton asked. "That's my voice," I said carefully. "But those messages have been edited. I never threatened my wife." Denton's smile widened. "So you're claiming these voicemails, time-stamped and verified by Mrs. Riker's phone provider, are fabricated?" "I am." I kept my voice level. "They've been spliced together from different conversations. Quite the conspiracy theory." Denton turned to the mediator. My client feared exactly this kind of denial and paranoid accusation. For the next 2 hours, they hammered me with questions about finances, Mason's care, deployment schedules. Every answer I gave was twisted, every explanation met with skepticism. By the time we finished, even the mediator looked convinced I was unstable. Outside, Patricia didn't sugarcoat it. "That was rough," she said, rubbing her temples. "Those voicemails are damaging, Nathan. I'll file an evidentiary challenge requesting forensic audio analysis. But what? But perception matters in family court. Once something like this gets out, it's hard to undo the damage, especially online." I stared across the parking lot, where Top waited in his truck. "They're going to use this to take Mason." "I'll fight it," Patricia promised. "But you need to prepare yourself." The drive back to Top's place passed in silence. The ground beneath me was crumbling faster than I could shore it up. I'd survived firefights and IEDs only to be taken out by doctored voicemails and legal paperwork. That evening, I sat on Top's porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and crimson. In Afghanistan, this was the dangerous hour, when shadows grew long and snipers found their advantage. Seemed fitting for how this day had gone. The screen door banged open behind me. Top burst onto the porch, laptop in hand, face split in a grin I hadn't seen since we'd taken that Taliban weapons cache in Helmand. "Got it," he said, dropping into the chair beside me. "Satellite telemetry from CENTCOM. Rock-solid proof of your location when those supposed voicemails were recorded." He spun the laptop toward me. On screen was an official military document showing my GPS coordinates for the dates in question. "You were 7,200 miles away, brother, in a forward operating base with no cell service." For the first time in days, I felt something like hope. "They can't argue with military satellite tracking." "Damn right they can't." Top tapped the screen. "My contacts authenticated everything. Chain of custody is airtight, admissible in any court." I exhaled slowly, muscles unwinding from a tension I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to be without it. "We've got them," Top continued. "This proves Gary and Kelly doctored evidence. The judge will have to—" Distant sirens cut through the night, their wail rising and falling like the warning klaxons in Kabul. I'd heard that sound too many times not to recognize what it meant. Danger approaching. "Will it be enough in time?" I asked, watching the red lights flash somewhere across town. 2 days later, I stood in Top's garage watching him assemble what he called our kill package. Military precision in civilian clothes. He slid satellite logs, bank records, and notarized statements into a leather portfolio while I paced, checking my phone every 30 seconds. "You're gonna wear a hole in my concrete," Top said, not looking up. "Mason's nurse was supposed to text an update an hour ago. Focus, Riker, one battle at a time." My phone finally buzzed. I snatched it up, but instead of the nurse, it was Patricia. "Nathan, we have a problem. Kelly's transferred Mason to Ridgeview Recovery Center under her maiden name, Hartman." My stomach dropped. "She can't do that. I'm his father." "She did it, and she's restricted visitation to immediate family members she approves. Unless what? Unless you make a contribution to his care. $5,000. The rage hit me like a flashbang, blinding white and deafening. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles ached. She's holding my son hostage for money? Legally, it's a gray area. She's claiming Mason needs specialized care she can't afford alone. Bullshit. She's got 42 grand of my money. Top looked up from his papers, eyes narrowed. How soon does she want payment? I asked. Today, before 4. Otherwise, they won't add you to the approved visitor list until next week. The closing was at 2. Everything was converging on the same few hours. I'll call you back, I said, ending the call. Top closed his portfolio. She's escalating, trying to split your focus. It's working. I slammed my fist against the workbench, sending tools rattling. I should be with Mason right now. And that's exactly what she's counting on. Top gripped my shoulder. Listen to me. If we don't stop this closing, she walks away with everything. The house, the equity, your reputation. You lose all leverage from Mason. The familiar smell of gun oil and leather from Top's garage brought me back to pre-mission briefings. Focus on the objective. Identify threats. Execute. All right, I said. House first, then Mason. Top nodded. That's my Ranger. We loaded into his truck, the portfolio between us like a tactical nuclear option. As Top drove, I rehearsed what to say, how to stand, when to strike. Combat instincts. Repurposed. The escrow office sat in a glass and steel building downtown. Tasteful landscaping, expensive cars in reserved spots. I spotted Gary's BMW with its vanity plate, Flipper. Remember, Top said as we parked, timing is everything. Let him think he's winning until we drop the hammer. The elevator ride to the 6th floor felt like ascending to a sniper position, calm before chaos. When the doors opened, a receptionist led us to a conference room where 6 people sat around a polished table. Gary Lefebvre stood at the head, designer suit, and too white smile. He faltered slightly when he saw me, then recovered with a hand extended. Nate, didn't expect to see you here. I ignored his hand. Wouldn't miss it. The escrow agent, a woman with steel-rimmed glasses, frowned. Mr. Riker, this is irregular. The seller's representative has already provided your power of attorney. Forged, Top said, placing his portfolio on the table. Gary laughed, too loud. What is this? Some kind of joke. A man in an expensive suit, Gary's attorney stood. My client has all necessary documentation. If you're here to disrupt a legal transaction, we're here to prevent fraud, I said. Gary's smile tightened. Look, Nate, I know this is difficult. Divorce is messy, but Kelly's been clear about your issues. He nodded to his attorney, who pressed a button on a laptop. Suddenly, my voice filled the room through hidden speakers. Swear to God, Kelly, when I get back there, you'll regret ever crossing me. The investors shifted uncomfortably. A woman near the end clutched her pearls. You think I don't know what you're doing? I've killed men for less than what you're pulling. My pulse thundered in my ears. Every eye in the room looked at me differently now. The unstable veteran, the threat. Gary had weaponized those doctored voicemails perfectly. These recordings, Gary's attorney continued smoothly, demonstrate why Mrs. Riker sought protection and authorized the sale. For her safety and her son's. The escrow agent looked at me with new wariness. Perhaps we should proceed. Gary smirked and clicked play again. Touch my money again, and you'll see what happens when you push a man too far. He was winning. I could feel it. If they signed those papers, the money would vanish, probably offshore, untraceable, Mason's future, my home, everything gone. Gary clicked his pen and held it like a victory baton. Shall we sign and be done with this unpleasantness? The second voicemail was halfway through its venom when Top suddenly stood. His movement was deliberate, almost choreographed, like he'd timed it for maximum impact. That's enough theater, he said, voice cutting through my supposed threats. The escrow agent frowned. Sir, we're in the middle of... Top didn't wait for her to finish. He strode forward with military precision, sliding a manila folder across the polished table. The folder bore red stamps, classified and CENTCOM secure. What you're hearing is digital manipulation, Top announced, flipping open the folder. And I've got satellite logs that prove it. Gary's attorney scoffed. This is ridiculous. You can't just… Actually, I can. Top tapped the official Department of Defense letterhead. These are authenticated geolocation timestamps from U.S. Central Command. They show Staff Sergeant Riker's exact position during every one of those alleged calls. The room fell silent as investors leaned forward. I watched their eyes track across the documents, coordinates, timestamps, official seals. According to these logs, Top continued, Sergeant Riker was 7,200 miles away in Kandahar province when these threats were supposedly made. Unless he can teleport, these recordings are fabricated. Gary's face drained of color. Those could be faked. Anyone can print something that looks official. Top smiled, not the friendly kind. That's why I brought backup. He pulled out his tablet and tapped the screen. The room's presentation system hijacked. The wall monitor flickered to life. Combat footage appeared. Grainy, date-stamped, unmistakably Afghanistan. There I was, leading a patrol through a dusty village, time code matching exactly when I'd supposedly been threatening Kelly by phone. This footage has been verified by 3 separate intelligence officers, Top said. Chain of custody is unbroken. The escrow agent's glasses slipped down her nose. I don't understand. If these signatures are forged, I finished for her. My wife and Mr. Lefebvre conspired to steal my property while I was deployed. Gary's attorney frantically flipped through papers. This doesn't. We need to adjourn to review. No adjournment necessary, came a new voice from the doorway. A uniformed bailiff stepped in, badge gleaming. Top had arranged this too. County courthouse backup. I'm here to secure evidence in a potential fraud case, the bailiff announced. Please don't touch any documents on the table. The escrow agent looked horrified. We were about to transfer funds and commit wire fraud, Top added. Gary's cool facade cracked completely. Sweat beaded his forehead as he tugged at his collar. Look, there's been a misunderstanding, Kelly assured me. Save it for your statement, I said. Outside, sirens wailed closer. The bailiff spoke into his radio, confirming our location. Building security appeared in the hallway, directing uniformed officers toward our conference room. Gary bolted from his chair, lunging for the door. This is insane. I didn't forge anything. It was all Kelly's idea. The investors recoiled, phones emerging to capture the meltdown. Camera flashes popped like distant firefights. Truth was finally louder than lies. 2 police officers blocked the doorway, ordering everyone to remain seated. Gary froze, then slumped back into his chair. Gary Lefebvre, one officer asked. He nodded weakly. We need to ask you some questions about potential mortgage fraud and document forgery. I watched silently as they read him his rights. The room buzzed with whispers and clicking phone keyboards. Social media would be lighting up within minutes, exactly what we needed. Top leaned close to me. Round 1 to us. The funds are frozen, and the house sale is dead. I nodded, relief washing through me, but it was short-lived. Kelly still has Mason. One battle at a time, Top murmured. But this footage goes public today. By tonight, her story falls apart. The escrow agent approached us, visibly shaken. Mr. Riker, we had no idea. The documentation seemed legitimate. That's why fraud works, I said, not unkindly. As police escorted Gary out, he shot me a desperate look. Nate, you have to believe me. I didn't know what she was planning. She said you were abusive, that Mason wasn't safe. The officers nudged him forward, cutting off his pleas. An investor approached, hand extended. Staff Sergeant, I want to apologize. My firm nearly participated in this travesty. I shook his hand, feeling oddly detached. The victory tasted hollow with Mason still under Kelly's control. Outside the conference room, reporters had already gathered. Someone had tipped them off. Microphones thrust toward us as questions overlapped. Sergeant Riker, is it true your wife tried to sell your home while you were deployed? Were the abuse allegations fabricated? Mr. Lefebvre, did you knowingly forge documents? Top guided me through the chaos with a hand on my shoulder. No comment until our attorney reviews everything, he repeated. As we pushed toward the elevator, I caught my reflection in the glass walls, still in my wrinkled fatigues, dark circles under my eyes. I looked like a man who'd been through war, because I had. just not the one I'd trained for. The elevator doors closed on the commotion, giving us a moment's peace. "What now?" I asked. Top checked his watch. "Now we use this momentum." Kelly's still got Mason, but her foundation just crumbled. The elevator doors opened to chaos. News vans lined the curb outside the glass lobby doors, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like strange metal flowers. Inside, reporters clustered, microphones ready, cameras balanced on shoulders. "Shit," I muttered. Top gave me a sideways glance. "This is good, Nate. Trust me. For the case, maybe, not for my blood pressure." We stepped out as uniformed officers led Gary toward the lobby. His designer suit looked suddenly cheap with his hands cuffed behind his back. The confident real estate shark had transformed into a pale, sweating mess. "Nathan Riker," a reporter spotted me, and the pack swiveled. "Can you comment on the allegations of mortgage fraud?" I straightened my shoulders, old habit before facing fire. Top had prepped me for this moment, knowing Kelly's lawyers would be watching. "My attorney will handle specific details," I said, keeping my voice level. "But I can confirm that today, authorities uncovered evidence of forged documents related to my home while I was deployed overseas serving our country." Cameras flashed. I blinked away the spots in my vision. "Were you aware your wife was involved in selling your home?" another reporter called out. "I returned from Afghanistan to find my son overdosed and my house in foreclosure," I said, letting just enough emotion show. "No soldier should come home to that." Gary was being escorted through the lobby now, officers flanking him. When he spotted the media frenzy, his eyes widened. "Kelly promised me backup," he shouted in my direction. "She said she'd handle everything if it went south." The reporters surged toward him, questions flying. I watched him crumble in real time, his composure disintegrating under the pressure. "She told me you were violent, that you threatened her." Gary's voice cracked. "I was helping her escape." The officers tightened their grip on his arms, moving him toward the doors. "That's enough, sir." I remembered those backyard barbecues, Gary flipping burgers while complimenting Kelly's potato salad, all while plotting to steal everything I'd built. The betrayal still burned like white phosphorus. A female reporter stepped closer to me, her expression softened. "Sergeant Riker, how is your son doing?" The question caught me off guard. For a moment, I saw Mason's pale face on the kitchen floor, then in the hospital bed. I swallowed hard. "He's fighting, and I'm fighting for him." "One more question," she pressed. "What would you say to other military families facing challenges during deployment?" Top tensed beside me, but I knew how to answer this one. "Trust is sacred," I said. "But verify everything, especially when you're thousands of miles away serving your country. And to the spouses at home, remember what your partners are sacrificing. They deserve better than this." I gestured toward Gary being loaded into a police cruiser. The escrow officer emerged from the elevator, clutching a folder. "The transaction has been frozen," she announced to her supervisor. "All funds are locked pending investigation." The reporters caught every word, scribbling notes. The legal blow had landed. My phone vibrated. My lawyer's name flashed on the screen. "Excuse me," I said to the reporters. "I need to take this." Top created a buffer as I stepped aside to answer. "Nathan, I've got news," my lawyer said without preamble. "The protective order hearing has been moved up. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. My stomach dropped. "Tomorrow? Why?" Judge saw the news breaking about the mortgage fraud, wants to address the protective order before it gets more complicated. Is that good or bad for us? Depends. Kelly's attorney will push hard on the PTSD angle, claim you're unstable. The forgery evidence helps us, but one legal win might not offset her accusations, I finished. Exactly. Be at the courthouse by 8. Wear a suit, not uniform. Look civilian, stable, calm. I ended the call and rejoined Top, who was fielding questions with military precision. "We need to go," I told him quietly. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Gary's police cruiser pulled away, red and blue lights silent. The reporters finally turned their attention elsewhere, chasing the next headline. "Hearings tomorrow. I told Top as we walked to his truck. Judge moved it up. He nodded slowly. Fast is good. Gives Kelly less time to prepare. Or less time for us to gather more evidence. We've got enough. Gary just implicated her on camera, and we've got the forgery proof. Top unlocked the truck. This is the momentum we needed. I wasn't convinced. The public victory felt hollow with Mason still under Kelly's control, trapped in a rehab facility I couldn't even visit. Back at Top's place, I spread Mason's medical files across the kitchen table. Photos of my boy hooked to IVs, toxicology reports, admission forms signed with Kelly's maiden name. Each page felt like a knife between my ribs. The clock on the microwave read 11:43 p.m. I should sleep before tomorrow's hearing, but rest seemed impossible. You should get some shut-eye, Top said, setting a mug of coffee beside me. Court in the morning. Can't, I said, flipping through discharge recommendations. Not until I figure out how to break Kelly's hold on him. Top didn't argue. He understood. Some missions don't allow for downtime. I stared at Mason's pale face in the hospital photo, remembering how he used to wear my dog tags to school on days when he needed extra courage. Now I needed that same courage. I'm coming for you, buddy, I whispered to the photo. Just hold on. The night stretched ahead, long and sleepless, but I wouldn't close my eyes until I'd found a way to bring my son home. The courthouse steps glistened with morning dew as I climbed them at 7:45 a.m. I'd barely slept, but Top had pressed a fresh suit into my hands at dawn. Charcoal gray, conservative tie. Look like a banker, not a soldier, he'd said. I wasn't expecting the media ambush. Camera flashes popped like distant mortar fire the moment I reached the top step. Sergeant Riker, how does it feel to be framed? Will you sue your wife for defamation? Is your son recovering from the overdose? My jaw tightened. These vultures knew about Mason. I kept walking, eyes forward, the way we'd move through hostile villages, alert but not engaging. Top flanked my right side, a human buffer between me and the most aggressive reporters. No comment at this time, he repeated, his hand occasionally rising to guide cameras away. My lawyer waited at the courthouse doors, her expression all business. Good turnout, she said dryly. Let's get inside before they ask about your childhood pets. The marble hallway echoed with footsteps and hushed conversations. Courtroom 3B was already half full, mostly legal types, a few curious onlookers, and 2 uniformed officers I recognized from yesterday's arrest. Kelly's seat at the respondent's table remained conspicuously empty. Where is she? I whispered. My lawyer shrugged. Making an entrance, maybe. The bailiff called the court to order as Judge Harriet Lawson entered, mid-60s, silver-rimmed glasses, reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. She scanned the room, noting the empty chair. Counsel for Mrs. Hartman Riker. A thin man in an expensive suit rose. William Danforth, Your Honor, I must request a continuance. My client is experiencing a medical emergency and cannot attend today's proceedings. My heart sank. Another delay meant another day without Mason. The judge peered over her glasses. Nature of this emergency, counselor. Acute anxiety attack, Your Honor. She's under a doctor's care as we speak. My lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is the 3rd scheduling change in this matter. We have evidence suggesting this is part of a pattern of tactical delays. That's absurd, Danforth sputtered. My client is genuinely unwell. Counsel approach, the judge ordered. They huddled at the bench for 2 minutes, Danforth gesticulating. My lawyer calm but insistent. Finally, they returned to their tables. Request for continuance is denied, Judge Lawson announced. This hearing will proceed. Danforth's face flushed red. Your Honor, without my client. Your client had notice, counselor, and I'm troubled by material I've just been shown. She turned to my lawyer. You may present. My lawyer activated the courtroom display system. Your Honor, yesterday afternoon, the respondent's alleged co-conspirator, Gary Lefebvre, was arrested for mortgage fraud involving the petitioner's home. The screen showed Gary being led away in handcuffs, shouting about Kelly's promises. Though this footage confirms what we've maintained all along, that Mrs. Hartman Riker has engaged in a systematic effort to defraud her husband while he served overseas. Danforth objected, claiming the footage was prejudicial and irrelevant to the protective order. Overruled, the judge said. The protective order alleges violent tendencies. Evidence of fabrication goes directly to credibility. My lawyer continued presenting our case, the satellite logs, testimony from my commanding officer, bank records showing the emptied accounts. The judge took meticulous notes, occasionally glancing at Kelly's empty chair. Halfway through our presentation, a strange wave rippled through the courtroom. Heads bent over smartphones. Whispers spread. Even the bailiff checked his phone. The judge noticed, "Is there something more interesting than these proceedings happening on your devices?" An awkward silence fell until my lawyer cleared her throat. "Your Honor, it appears a video has just gone viral involving the respondent." "Approach," the judge ordered. Both attorneys went forward. After a brief conference, the judge nodded. "We'll take a 15-minute recess. Court will resume at 10:45. Top leaned over. "You need to see this." He held out his phone. On the screen, Kelly stood outside Cumberland County Federal Credit Union, mascara streaming down her face, hair disheveled. A small crowd of reporters surrounded her. "They froze everything!" she screamed, pounding on the bank's glass door. "Gary ruined everything! He promised me the money would clear before anyone found out!" A reporter thrust a microphone toward her. "Mrs. Riker, are you saying you knew about the forged documents?" "I didn't forge anything. That was Gary's job," she shrieked, then immediately covered her mouth, realizing what she'd admitted. No, I didn't know." The video cut to her trying to snatch a reporter's phone, then collapsing on a bench, sobbing that she just wanted out, and never meant for Mason to get hurt. My stomach turned. Even now, she was thinking about herself. When court resumed, the judge's expression had hardened. She addressed Danforth directly. "Counselor, I've viewed the footage circulating online. Your client appears well enough to create a public spectacle but not attend these proceedings." Danforth looked miserable. "Your Honor, I had no knowledge. Save it." She turned to me. "Sergeant Riker, I'm dissolving the temporary protective order, effective immediately. I see no credible evidence of threat or danger." Relief flooded through me. One battle won. "However," she continued, "regarding custody of the minor child, I'm withholding final judgment pending a Child Protective Services home inspection. Given the circumstances, I'm ordering that inspection to occur within 72 hours. My lawyer leaned close. "That's good. Fast-tracking." But the judge wasn't finished. "The inspection must occur at Sergeant Riker's permanent residence. Where are you currently residing, Sergeant?" "With a fellow veteran, Your Honor, temporarily." "And your family home?" It's currently taped off as a crime scene, Your Honor, part of the fraud investigation." The judge frowned. "Then you have 72 hours to secure appropriate housing for your son. CPS will need to verify adequate living conditions before I make a final custody determination." My mind raced. 72 hours to find a home with no access to my money, no credit, and a house I couldn't enter. The judge banged her gavel. "We're adjourned." Outside, Top gripped my shoulder. "One step closer, brother." "Yeah, but where am I going to find a place in 3 days?" The question hung in the air as more camera flashes erupted around us. I barely slept that night, pacing Top's spare bedroom like a caged animal. 72 hours to find suitable housing with no money, no credit, and a house I couldn't access. The math didn't work. "You look like hell," Top said, handing me black coffee at 5 a.m. "Feel worse." I rubbed my face, stubble scratching my palms. "I need a miracle or I lose Mason." Top's eyes narrowed. "You still got that retirement fund?" "The TSP? Yeah, but there's penalties." "Better than losing your son?" He tapped his phone. "I know someone." An hour later, we sat across from Diane Mercer, a realtor with silver-streaked hair and a no-nonsense handshake. Her office walls displayed photos of her with various military units. "My husband was 82nd Airborne," she explained, noting my unit patch. "Did 3 tours in Iraq before cancer took him. Now I help vets find homes when the system screws them." She listened to my situation without interruption, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, she didn't offer sympathy, just solutions. I've got a farmhouse that might work. Owner's a Vietnam vet moving to assisted living. Been on market 6 months, needs work, but it's solid. 5 acres, well water, propane heat. It's 20 minutes outside Fayetteville. Price? I asked. $165. Below market, but he wants a military family. She leaned forward. Here's what we do. Lease-to-own agreement. Small deposit secures it immediately. Gives you legal residence for the CPS inspection. We can close permanently once your equity releases. Hope flickered. How small a deposit? $20,000 minimum. Shows good faith. I winced. My thrift savings plan had about $45,000. My entire retirement savings. The early withdrawal penalties would cost me another $5,000 to $7,000. Can we see it today? I asked. I'll meet you there in an hour. The farmhouse sat back from the road, weathered clapboard showing its age. The porch sagged slightly, and the yard needed serious attention, but the maple trees offered shade, and the bones looked solid. Inside smelled of old wood and disuse. Dust motes danced in sunlight streaming through windows that needed washing. Kitchen's original, Diane said, gesturing to the worn countertops and ancient stove. But the roof's only 5 years old, and the well pump was replaced last summer. I ran my hand along a door frame, feeling the solid oak. Dad would have approved of this place. Something with character, something you could fix with your hands, something that would last. 2 bedrooms upstairs, 1 down, she continued. Owners leaving the appliances. What's the timeline? Top asked, inspecting the electrical panel. I can have papers drawn up today. If you can wire funds for the deposit by close of business, you'll have legal residence by tomorrow morning. I stepped out onto the back porch, taking in the overgrown field stretching toward a line of pines. Mason would have space here, room to breathe, room to heal. Let's do it, I said. The next 24 hours became a blur of paperwork and phone calls. I emptied my TSP, gritting my teeth at the penalties. Top drove me to the bank, the title company, the farmhouse for inspections. Meanwhile, my lawyer hammered the DA's office to expedite releasing the fraud hold on my home equity. The judge ordered it. She argued over speakerphone as we raced between appointments. My client needs those funds to comply with the court's housing requirement for his son. By evening, I had the lease-to-own agreement in hand, proof of residence. I called the hospital. Mr. Riker, the discharge coordinator said, we've received authorization for Mason's supervised release, but we need to verify your resident status before finalizing. I can bring the paperwork first thing tomorrow. Perfect. If everything's in order, Mason could come home tomorrow afternoon. Home. The word caught in my throat. That night, Top helped me haul over basic supplies. Air mattresses, clean sheets, a card table, 2 folding chairs, and groceries. We swept floors and wiped down surfaces, making the place livable if not comfortable. It's not much, I said, looking around the sparse kitchen. It's a start, Top replied. You're giving the kids something Kelly can't. Stability. The next morning, I showed the discharge coordinator my lease. She made copies, had me sign more forms, and finally said the words I'd been waiting to hear. Mason can be released at 2 o'clock. I nearly collapsed with relief. When I walked into Mason's room, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, hospital bracelet still on his wrist, looking small in borrowed clothes. The nurses had found him a plain t-shirt and sweatpants. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Dad, are we really leaving? Yeah, buddy. Got the all clear. The ride to the farmhouse was quiet. Mason stared out the window, fingers nervously tapping against his knee. It's not much yet, I warned as we pulled up the gravel drive. But it's ours, or will be soon. We walked through the empty rooms, our footsteps echoing. Mason touched things tentatively. The banister, the kitchen counter, the window frames, as if testing their reality. Your room's upstairs, I said. We'll get real furniture soon, but there's an air mattress for now. In the kitchen, I spread the lease papers on the card table. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the dusty floor. Mason stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around himself. You need to sign here, I pointed. Since you're 14, they want your signature too. He sat down, pen hovering over the paper. "Are we finally safe?" His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard. The equity funds were still frozen. The farmhouse deposit had drained my savings. We had maybe 2 weeks of breathing room before I'd need that money to close permanently. I looked my son in the eye. "We're getting there, Mason. One step at a time." He nodded and signed his name, his handwriting still shaky from the meds. That night, we slept on air mattresses in the living room, windows open to catch the summer breeze. I didn't sleep much, just watched Mason's chest rise and fall, grateful for each breath. Morning came with a call from my lawyer. "Good news, Nate. The DA's office is releasing partial equity funds today, enough for your farmhouse closing." I gripped the phone tighter. "When?" "Funds should hit your account by noon. I'd get to the bank early." I woke Mason with a gentle shake. "Hey, buddy. Got to make a run. You okay here for a bit?" He blinked sleepily. "Yeah, I'll just hang out. Top's coming by with supplies. I won't be long." The bank opened at 9. I was there at 8:30, pacing outside the glass doors. By 10:15, I was signing wire transfer forms, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "This clears today," I confirmed with the teller. "Yes, sir. The receiving bank should have it within the hour." I called the title company from the parking lot. "The wire's coming. We need to close today. Mr. Riker, we typically need... The CPS inspection is at 4. I need this done." There was a pause. "I'll see what I can do. Come by at 1. When I pulled back into the farmhouse drive, Top's truck was already there, tailgate down, boxes stacked in the bed. "Cavalry's arrived," he called, hauling a bed frame toward the house. "Got Mason's furniture from storage. That ex of yours left it behind. Guess she couldn't fit it in her getaway car." I felt a rush of gratitude. "Top, I don't know how to..." He waved me off. "Save it. We've got 3 hours to make this place pass inspection." We worked like we were back in the sandbox, prepping for a general's visit. Top assembled Mason's bed upstairs while I scrubbed the bathroom until the ancient fixtures gleamed. Mason pitched in too, stocking the pantry with groceries, arranging his few possessions in careful rows. "Found this in your deployment trunk," Top said, handing me a framed photo. Mason at 10, grinning gap-toothed on my shoulders at the beach. One of the few I'd taken with me overseas. I hung it in the living room, the sole decoration on bare walls. At 2 o'clock, we tackled the exterior. The front steps were caked with mud, the gutters sagging. I scrubbed while Top hammered, sweat soaking through our shirts in the Carolina heat. "Dad," Mason called from the porch. "I can't get the bedroom door to stay on the hinges." I wiped my forehead. "We'll have to take it down for now." Set it against the wall in the hallway. By 3:30, we'd transformed the place from empty shell to something resembling a home. Mason's room had a bed, desk, and lamp. The kitchen had dishes, the fridge held food, and the bathroom had towels hanging neatly on the rack. "Bedroom door," Top asked, checking our mental list. "Still won't stay. The frame's warped. I'll have to plane it down." "No time," he said, checking his watch. "We'll leave it in the truck for now." At 3:45, I got the text from the title company. "Closing complete. Congratulations on your new home." I showed Mason and Top, relief washing over me. "It's official." "Just in time," Top said, nodding toward the driveway where a gray minivan with state plates was pulling in. My stomach tightened. 2 women in business casual climbed out, clipboards in hand. "Mr. Riker, I'm Angela Winters from Child Protective Services. This is my colleague, Diane Lopez. We're here for the scheduled home inspection." I wiped my palms on my jeans and extended my hand. "Thank you for coming. We just moved in, so it's still a work in progress." Angela's smile was professional, but not unkind. "We understand. May we come in?" I led them through the house, pointing out the renovations we planned, the safety features already in place. They noted the smoke detectors, the locks on windows, the fully stocked kitchen. "Mason's room is upstairs," I said, leading them up the narrow staircase. Mason stood nervously by his bed, hands in his pockets. The women asked him a few gentle questions about the space, which he answered with quiet, "Yes, ma'ams," and "No, ma'ams." "And this is your bedroom?" Angela asked, stepping toward the doorway where the door should have been. "Yes," I said, my heart rate picking up. "The door is being adjusted. It's out in the truck." The women exchanged glances. Angela made a note on her clipboard. We continued the tour, ending back in the kitchen. I offered them water, which they declined. "Just one more thing," Diane said. "We need to check the—" A sudden gust of wind blew through an open window, slamming it shut with a bang. The toolboxes we'd left on the counter rattled loudly. Mason jumped. I flinched too. Old combat reflexes. The CPS agents exchanged another look, their pens hovering over their clipboards. My pulse pounded in my ears. This was it. The moment that could determine everything. I could almost hear the clock ticking, counting down the seconds until they made their decision. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Those pens hovering over clipboards might as well have been judges, gavels ready to fall. Then I heard the front door bang open, followed by Top's heavy footsteps. "Got that door right here," he called out, his voice deliberately cheerful. "Just needed to sand down the edges a bit." I nearly collapsed with relief. "Ladies, would you mind if my friend installs the bedroom door while we finish up?" Angela nodded. "Of course. We'd like to see all safety features in place before we leave." "I'll help him," I said, starting to move toward the stairs. "Actually, Mr. Riker," Diane interjected, "we have a few more questions for you specifically." My eyes met Top's. He gave me an almost imperceptible nod. "I've got this," and headed upstairs with the door and his toolbox. I guided the women to the kitchen table where they asked about my support system, employment prospects, and plans for Mason's education. I answered as steadily as I could, fighting to keep the desperation from my voice. "You mentioned you're a veteran," Angela said, glancing at her notes. "How do you think your military experience has prepared you for single parenthood?" The question caught me off guard. Most people assumed military service made you too rigid, too damaged for civilian parenting. I hesitated, then reached for my phone. "May I show you something?" I pulled up photos from my last deployment, not the combat ones, but the ones that mattered. Me teaching Afghan kids basic first aid, organizing a soccer game for local orphans, my unit building a schoolhouse. "In the Army, we call it force multiplication," I explained, swiping through images. "It means making the most impact with limited resources. It means mentorship." Their eyes softened as I showed them a picture of me with a teenage Afghan interpreter. This kid lost his father. I taught him English, helped him navigate life without a dad, just like I'll help Mason through this. The floorboards creaked overhead as Top worked on the door. The rhythmic sound of his hammer was oddly comforting. "Those are remarkable photos," Diane said, her pen finally moving across the page in what looked like positive notes. Just then, Mason appeared at the kitchen entrance, carrying a tray with a pitcher and glasses. "I made lemonade," he said, his voice quiet. His hands trembled slightly as he set the tray down, causing the glasses to clink together. "That's very thoughtful, Mason," Angela said, her professional demeanor warming. I watched my son carefully pour 3 glasses, his movements deliberate, concentrated. This wasn't the sullen, broken kid I'd found on the kitchen floor. This was Mason fighting for us in his own way. "It's from a mix," he admitted, pushing his hair back from his forehead. "But I added extra ice. It's really hot out there." The women accepted the glasses with genuine smiles. Something shifted in the room, the clipboard inspection giving way to human connection. "Your dad was just showing us some pictures from his time overseas," Diane said to Mason. Mason nodded. "He taught kids there too, like me." "I hear you're starting at a new school soon," Angela said. "Yes, ma'am. Dad says I can join the robotics team if my grades stay up." The conversation flowed more naturally after that. Top came downstairs, wiping his hands on a rag. "Doors hung and working smooth," he announced. "Want to see?" We all trooped upstairs where Top demonstrated the door opening and closing perfectly, the new lock functional and secure. "Well," Angela said after they'd completed their final notes, "I think we have everything we need for now." My heart lodged somewhere in my throat. And Provisional approval, pending final paperwork, she said. We'll need to do one follow-up visit in 30 days. But as long as nothing significant changes, I don't foresee any issues. I must have swayed on my feet because Top's hand suddenly gripped my shoulder, steadying me. Thank you, I managed. Thank you both. After they left, the three of us stood in the kitchen, stunned into silence until Top broke it with a whoop that probably startled the neighbors. We did it, brother. We goddamn did it. Mason laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from him in too long, and I pulled him into a hug that he actually returned. Later, after Top left and night settled in, Mason and I sat on the porch steps. The air had cooled, crickets chirping in the overgrown grass. I'd need to borrow a mower soon. Mason had been quiet, turning something over in his hands. In the porch light, I could see it was his broken dog tags. Dad, you got pliers in your toolkit. I fetched them, curious. Mason took them and carefully worked the metal links back together. His tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. There, he said finally, holding up the repaired chain. It wasn't perfect. You could still see where it had been broken, but it was whole again. He stood and placed the tags carefully on the porch railing. Then, to my surprise, he reached into my pocket and pulled out Dad's silver compass. This should go here too, he said, setting it beside the tags. My chest loosened for the first time in weeks. Something about seeing those two objects side by side, my past and Mason's future, felt right, like maybe we'd actually make it through this mess. The moment was broken by my phone buzzing. I checked the screen, expecting Top with more good news. Instead, it was an email from the district attorney's office. Mr. Riker, your presence is requested tomorrow at 9 a.m. for Gary Lefebvre's sentencing hearing. As the victim of record, your impact statement is required to finalize damages. Attendance is mandatory for equity release authorization. I stared at the screen, the weight settling back onto my shoulders. Missing this would delay getting our money back, money we desperately needed to keep this new life afloat. Morning sunlight streamed through the courthouse windows, catching the American flag's stars as they rippled in the air conditioning. I straightened my tie, borrowed from Top, and tried to ignore the camera phones pointed in my direction. The courtroom benches were packed with reporters and curious locals who'd caught wind of the Soldier's Revenge More story that had been circulating. I hadn't slept much. Mason had tossed and turned most of the night, and I'd spent hours staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I needed to say. This wasn't a firefight or a night patrol, but my hands still trembled like I was back in the sandbox. Yo, the state calls Nathan Riker to the stand. Walking to the witness box felt like crossing a minefield. Every step deliberate, measured. The Bible felt cool under my palm as I swore to tell the truth. Mr. Riker, the prosecutor began, could you please detail for the court the financial impact of Mr. Lefebvre's actions? I cleared my throat, finding Top's steady gaze in the gallery. When I returned from Afghanistan, I discovered my home had been fraudulently refinanced using forged signatures. My son was in medical crisis, and I found our family accounts emptied. The mortgage was in default, foreclosure imminent. My voice grew steadier as I continued, laying out the cold numbers. Mason's medical bills exceeding $60,000, 3 months of missed mortgage payments, the cost of emergency housing, legal fees. The prosecutor nodded encouragingly, and I felt the jury's eyes on me. Beyond the financial toll, I continued, my son nearly died. While I was fighting to save him, Mr. Lefebvre was actively working to ensure we'd have no home to return to. Gary sat at the defense table, shoulders hunched in an ill-fitting suit. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The defense attorney tried to paint Gary as Kelly's pawn, manipulated by a desperate woman. But the paper trail was too damning. Gary's signature on too many documents, his voice on too many calls. When the judge asked if I had a final statement, I stood straight, the way my father taught me. Your Honor, I've spent my adult life in combat zones, protecting American values. I never expected the battlefield would follow me home, or that the enemy would wear the face of a neighbor who once shared meals at my table. I don't seek vengeance. I only ask for justice, for my son, and for every veteran who deserves to come home to safety, not betrayal. The judge's gavel cracked like distant artillery. Gary Brent Lefebvre. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison for mortgage fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Restitution in the full amount of $412,000 is ordered, with immediate release of all frozen assets to the victim. The gavel slammed again, and just like that, it was over. The legal battle, at least. Outside, microphones thrust toward my face as cameras flashed. I kept my comments brief, professional, the way a staff sergeant should. Justice was served today. My focus now is rebuilding a stable home for my son. On a nearby monitor in the courthouse lobby, the local news was already running the story. Split screen with footage of Kelly exiting a rehab facility, head down, surrounded by people in suits. Not friends, creditors, attorneys, according to the caption. The reporter's voice explained that multiple lawsuits had been filed against her for debt and fraud. I felt no satisfaction watching her reputation crumble. Just a hollow relief that the threat she posed was neutralized. My phone buzzed with a text from our lawyer. Equity cleared. Farmhouse deed recording as we speak. Congratulations, Nathan. You won. The drive home was quiet, my mind still processing. We'd survived, not unscathed, but intact. That evening, Mason and I sat on the porch steps of our farmhouse. Our farmhouse, legally and finally. The sun dipped low, painting the overgrown field gold. Fireflies began to rise from the tall grass, their lights blinking like distant signals. "Dad?" Mason's voice was soft. "Is it really over now?" "Yeah, buddy, it's really over." He nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out his dog tags, the links now soldered properly by the shop teacher at his new school. He laid them carefully on the porch rail, then placed my father's dented silver compass beside them. I watched him arrange them, side by side, the symbol of his connection to me, and the heirloom that had guided 3 generations of Riker men. "I think Grandpa would be proud," he said. My throat tightened. I stood and picked up the compass, its weight familiar in my palm. The needle swung true north, steady and certain despite all the dents and scratches on its case. Looking out across our land, with my son beside me and a future ahead that we'd rebuild together, I spoke the words my father had whispered to me before he left for Vietnam. The same words that had carried me through 4 combat tours and this final battle on home soil. Honor wins when cowards cash out. Mason nodded, understanding in his eyes that were suddenly older than 14. The fireflies rose higher, lighting our way forward,